as a 14-year-old, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. I'd catch the Truce Metro bus up to Paseo, and that way I could get there by 6 a.m. and get in and lift weights for an hour, and then I would go to school. And me and another one of my friends, we were literally the only two people on the team that did that on that consist of a basis the entire off season, which obviously I feel like helped to get to varsity level on the next year. So earlier I said that I was in all of the theater productions in high school, and which is true. I was, but I was also varsity football player at the exact same time. Fitness kind of changed my life, right? Like I was overweight kid being made fun of, and fitness kind of came in and like really helped to shape my life.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. This is part 2 of Jeff's interview with Brandon Calloway. You'll want to listen to part 1, but for now, let's listen as Brandon continues his story on the early days of generating income for tomorrow.
So at the end of that hour, I reached out to Chris and I said, hey, I know you don't know me, but I think that this could actually get built into a thing. And he ignored me because I'm some random guy on Facebook, right? So why wouldn't you? And then I reached out to him again because I was very confident that this could turn into something. And so he responded to me, and then him and Cornell went to high school together. And so the three of us so he reached out to Cornell, the three of us got together, and so from between April 30th of 2020 and May 5th of 2020, we got together, had a few meetings, and built what is now G.I.F.T. And so generating income for tomorrow, it's that original idea of, giving out $150,000 a month, but we didn't have any money. So, you can't give out $150,000 a month if you don't have money. And so we started raising money. I reached out to a bunch of Black businesses and said, hey, we're going to give out grants. What would you need? And so we got a lot of information from those businesses that we just cold called. So we developed a program based off of their feedback. So now we give out $10,000, $25,000, and $50,000 grants. And then we also asked them, other than money, what else would you need? And they said, well, marketing, accounting, legal, and coaching. And so every time we give a grant to somebody, we give them a year's worth of all of those things. We give them a small business marketing package. We pay our bookkeeper to keep their books for a year. We are partnered with Hush Blackwell, so they take them on as legal counsel. And then we now have staff, and so our chief of business development becomes their business coach for a year. And so we built that out early on, and we started raising money, person by person. Cornell, our COO, he's also our marketing guy, and he built our website and our logo and our social media page, and we took that message to the community at large, right? We went back to that Facebook post and said, all right, we're launched, and we got like $60 from it, right? There was a whole bunch of interest when it was just an idea, and a whole bunch of opinions. But when we actually launched, we got about $60 from that original post, and then when we took it to the community at large, we also it would be horrible of me not to mention that, because we launched May 5th of 2020, and then like a week after we launched, Ahmaud Arbery, the video about Ahmaud Arbery came out, about him being killed, and then like a week after that or 2 weeks after that, Breonna Taylor, her story came out about her being killed. And then the week after that, George Floyd was killed. And so right when we launched talking about building Black businesses and closing the racial wealth gap and create some economic equity, the entire world started talking about the exact same thing literally 3 weeks after we launched. And so we were primed for media attention, but we were young. Nobody knew who we were. And so I sent a bunch of random messages to the heads of all of the media. So the editor of the Kansas City Star sent him a message, said, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but here's this thing where we're trying to do. You guys should do a story on it." The same thing with the editor of the Business Journal and of Fox 4 and all of them. And a lot of them got back and actually did stories on us, which helped us reach a larger audience. I called my old college professors. We hopped on Zoom. I said, "Hey, here's what we're trying to do." And they made our first $100 donations. And so throughout the summer of 2020, we're just spreading our message. We got some good media attention. We raised $11,000 and gave $10,000 to Ruby Jeans to help them get through the pandemic. And so now we've been going strong, and we got into our second fiscal year, and we're able to give out 2 grants a month, and now into our third and still giving out 2 grants a month. And so we've reached the point where we've given out, 1.1 million to 58 different businesses on the east side of Kansas City, and we're looking at around 80 to 100 new jobs that we've been able to create in just this short 3-year time frame.
Brand, since many people that listen are not from Kansas City, tell us why the geographic area you serve. What's the history behind that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. And so, we specifically focus on giving grants to Black businesses on the east side of Kansas City, because it is the historically redlined area of Kansas City, right? And so if any of the listeners are unfamiliar with redlining, it is the practice that it was started back in the 1920s of drawing different color lines around different districts. And so red, green, yellow, to determine areas of a geographic location that they should lend to versus high risk areas. And so what it boiled down to was that predominantly white areas had green lines drawn around them and were listed as good investments. And then predominantly Black areas, even if they had the same economic potential as those predominantly white areas, got red lines drawn around them, and they were listed as risky investments. High risk, don't land there. And so that led to creating communities that were predominantly poor and Black, and other communities that were predominantly wealthy and white. And so fast forward 100 years now into 2020, and we still see that those same historically redlined communities are predominantly poor and Black. And that is not a coincidence. It is a direct impact of the longstanding practices of redlining. And so our process is that by identifying that community, leading with grant dollars to invest in those businesses, help them grow, then they're able to create jobs for the other individuals that live around there and have the capacity to transform a community economically. And so, when we started, I talked about back in May of 2020 how I cold called a bunch of Black businesses. At the same time, I also did a data analysis on some zip codes in Kansas City, and so I took the 6 highest populated high income zip codes and compared them to the 6 highest populated low income zip codes, and we found that the high populated low income zip codes were all east of Truce. They were 75% Black, and they were had a 36% poverty rate. The high income, high populated zip codes were all west of Truce. They were 91% white, and they had a 5% poverty rate. And so we look at that and say, okay, that's Kansas City's racial wealth gap right there. And Kansas City is one of 21 hyper-segregated cities. It's a designation that it's a federal designation that we have from the census. And so it's not just hyperbole, it's an actual designation that we have, and being a classified hyper-segregated city. And so what we've been able to do in the 1.1 million given out in that area, and creating those jobs is exactly what we set out to do, to create some upper economic mobility. And we see it as having a overall holistic approach on the community. When poverty is high in an area, crime is high in an area, right? When people don't have things, they go get it. And so we know that if we can create jobs, raise median income levels, create more financial accessibility, we expect to see, increase in the quality of education, because we expect to see a increase in tax dollars that are going to those schools, as well as a decrease in poverty related crime, and in the overall racial wealth gap that we see here in Kansas City. So that's kind of the why, the what, and a little bit of the how.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you explained it. You did a great job. It's interesting because I grew up in Peekskill, New York. It's about 18,000, about an hour north of New York City, and it was a very ethnic community, city. We were Italians, Polish, Irish, 50% Black, and I literally lived on Fair Lawn Avenue. So if I lived across the street, we went to Peekskill High School, which was kind of more it was the city high school, but I lived in another school district. Literally, the street was, it could fit basically two cars. That's how narrow the street was. And I went to Hendrick Hudson, which was predominantly white, but it was blue. It was a mixture. You had blue collar kids like myself, that their parents never went to college. Some of them didn't graduate high school. And but you also had kids that lived in really nice neighborhoods. Their fathers, mainly their fathers, would be screenwriters, TV producers, and take the train into the city. And then when I moved here right after college, I worked for AT&T. The data center was between Troost and Prospect, so I worked there. So, but I didn't think anything of it. I never really heard of the redlining till just recently, the whole thing with Truce and J.C. Nichols and, all that stuff. It was, it just, incredible that these things just come out now. So, I mean, just kudos to you and your colleagues that co-founded that work there at G.I.F.T to do what you're doing. I just think it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
I do think it's interesting, though, based on your fitness background. You're kind of like the Planet Fitness of not-for-profits, right? The $10 a month every month, and that's the kind of the Planet Fitness model. But I love yeah. So and it seems that you're getting a lot of obviously you can get the corporate sponsorships and the larger donors, as well as the foundation money, but it seems that you have a lot of individual donors. Is that true? And what percent are donating every month?
Yes, so we definitely have a lot of individual donors. Had it not been for individuals, we wouldn't exist, right? So we do get a little bit of corporate support. We get some foundation support. We actually run into challenges there a lot. One of the things that I hear from corporations and foundations is, well, if we give you guys money and then you turn around and grant it out, we could have just done that. And then my response to them is, but you don't, but you don't. You could, but you do not. Nor do they have the vetting system that we have either. But that is one of the challenges that causes us to not have the number of corporate or foundation support that you might see of another nonprofit of our size. It's just that what we are doing is innovative and different in the philanthropic community. But when it comes to individuals, our first year out of the gate, we raised money from zero. We didn't start with that big seed money from anybody. So we ended up raising $443,000 in our first year, and 229,000 of it came from individuals.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Right. I mean, now we have we're not at 15,000 donors. We're at around 720 donors that donate somewhere between, or our average donation is like $17 a month. And so we're getting in around $10,000 to $11,000 a month just from our monthly donors. And then we have a bunch of people who are just one-time donors. So they might donate $120 at a time. Or they might, make a one-time donation of $1,000 to $10,000. And so, I mean, even in year two, we raised $1.1 million in year two. 443,000 came from individual donors. Wow. So like our individual donors are absolutely, they're the thing that helped us start. They help us sustain and help us grow.
So when you started G.I.F.T with your co-founders, I mean, you guys really moved quickly through the process. So did you have a mentor or somebody that guided you through to get the non-for-profit classification? I don't know what your classification is. If it's
so we're a 501c3 public charity. And no, we did not. I figured, so I did all of. So in addition to, I built our program so I was the one that reached out to our businesses and did the cold call and actually put the program together, and as well as I did the data analysis on the zip codes, but I also did all of our paperwork. And so I learned it as I went along. I figured it out. Googled it. I learned it. I learned it as I went along. And so part of it is that, so my fitness background, I mentioned earlier, my specialty in fitness was, one of them was sports performance. The other one was clinical, corrective exercise. In sports performance and in like corrective exercise, they are both highly analytical. Sports performance is about exercise endocrinology, right? What hormones am I stimulating for how long, for how much, to have X amount of desired impact. And so every time I'm prescribing any kind of workout, it has to have meaning to it. And I have to understand that why of that and what that outcome is going to be and what the risk of that workout is going to be. And so the flip side of that is the clinical corrective exercise. I need to understand how the body moves, how the body's supposed to move, why it's moving the way it is. And then when there's dysfunction in how it's moving, I need to be able to identify that, figure out where that dysfunction is originating from, and how do I remedy that? How do I rectify that? And so both of those are highly analytical processes that take a lot of like dissecting. If you go to somebody that is doing clinical exercise, one of the first things they're going to have you do is just, okay, walk. And they're just going to stand there and watch you walk. And there's a ton of things that they're thinking about and looking at while you're walking. And it's just your regular basic walk that you do on autopilot. And so that same analytical process that I had been in fitness for 10 years at that point. That was my life. That's just how my brain works. And so we needed to start a nonprofit. It's 100% doable. I just needed to figure out the steps and then execute them. And so that part wasn't, because of that approach, it actually wasn't as challenging as I thought it would be. Now, when we started getting bigger, when we started getting bigger, one of the things we did, we partnered with Hush Blackwell. And as soon as we partnered with Hush Blackwell, I said, okay, look at all of my paperwork, because I did it myself. And I'm pretty sure I did it right. But look at it. Yeah. And they did. I met with one of their nonprofit attorneys, and she looked over all of our paperwork. She looked over our bylaws, looked over our 501c3 and all of that. And it all checked out. It was all done correctly. But I also, we built a board. So I said, we filed our paperwork May 5th. We built a board and we're fundraising by May 18th. And so I found people to put on our board that also filled in our gaps of the stuff that, that I knew I couldn't do, or I knew that it wouldn't be great for me to spend my time doing. Bookkeeping. If we're going to raise money, eventually we will need grant funding. If we're going to get grant funding, we have to have really clean financials, which means that before I take in $1, I need to have a bookkeeping system set up so we can be able to track from the very first penny that we've ever taken in. That's why we didn't start raising money right away, because we didn't have that system set up. I wasn't going to figure that out, and so I found an accountant. I pitched to her and sold her on why she should be on our board. She came on and she did all of our books. She set up QuickBooks for us that very first week, and we have never had any issues or challenges with pulling a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, a statement of activity, or any of that. And I didn't have to teach myself how to do that in the beginning now, because she does. So I have learned how to do it in doing it alongside her. But she is still on our board, and she still does it on a monthly basis. And so now, even though I know how to do it now, I don't even have to. So yeah, surrounding myself with people that are able to fill in the gaps that I don't have, while also just having that, all right, we got to get it done. Let's figure it out and do it mindset. Cornell, our COO, co-founder, Cornell Gorman. So he has a fitness background too. So super coincidental, because we didn't know each other before, right? He has a fitness background too. He's a personal trainer. Cornell taught himself marketing completely from scratch, right? So he taught himself photography, videography, video editing, graphic design, and social media and digital marketing, all completely from scratch. You see, if you go to our website, he built it completely self-taught. He built our website. Wow. He built our social media. Nice. He created our logo. And so having those kind of like, hey, we got to get this done, attitudes. And so I mean, he had taught himself how to do that before we launched G.I.F.T. But that was his same mindset as well. And so, Chris still lives in Houston. And so he never moved back. And so quickly, after May, it became me and Cornell, and I had my strengths, he had his strengths. So we knocked it out. And so yeah, I think that mind frame, as well as the team that we were able to build and surround ourselves with, and obviously the environment that we were in the summer of 2020, all of those things, all together led to the current success that we've been able to have.
So it seemed, I mean, you did so many things well. Like you organized quickly, you filed to get your not-for-profit classification. You seemed to have hired a fairly large board early on to help with everything that needed to happen. What, if you look back on it, Brandon, what thing would you have changed? What would you have done differently, if anything?
The biggest thing that I think we did, that's early on. We had too much energy placed in getting corporate grants. So we put a lot of time and energy, obviously, into individuals. But we had this whole notion that, okay, once we got up and going, after a few months, we can go and get some corporate money, and that will come rolling in. And so we spent way too much time, probably a total of about 3 months of really, really focused on corporate grants. And in our first year, when we were building from scratch, that's deadly. Because what we found was that corporations don't like to give to nonprofits in their very first year. We don't have data, we don't have outcomes, and so we don't have anything to show. And so even during, 2020, when there was all of these Black Lives Matter, we stand with you, all of those statements, we were not the primary candidates for that money because we were in our first year. And so the return on investment of with the amount of time that we spent going after corporate dollars was just way too low. And so we figured that out. And we made a pivot and we stopped going after corporate dollars. But I wish we would have figured that out just a little bit earlier. And then, we had to work out a few kinks of our system when we were, you know, making the connection to our business coaches, because in the beginning it was a 2-man volunteer thing, right? So it was just me and Cornell, and neither one of us were on staff. I was still at United Way. and so we there were a lot of kinks to work out in, like, okay, when we deliver the grant to them and we, you know, bring on, like, we connect them with their technical assistance partners, and then all of the follow-up. I do wish we would have spent more time on that in the very beginning, before, I mean, we got about halfway through our year and really figured that out. And then when we started growing and bringing on staff, we were able to bring some of those processes in-house, which made them a whole lot better, and just streamlined and just made it more effective. But there was, those are just, you know, regular, typical growing pains in an organization and growing the way that we grew. So yeah, those are probably the two things off the top of my head that I think that we could go back and do it over again.
Yeah. So I have to ask you. I heard this quote that you had, and it's very Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins. It's a phenomenal quote, and I want to know the background of it. I believe the quote is, "The magic that people are waiting for, they already have."
Oh yeah, that. That's funny. I do say that a lot. I actually. So going back to, you asked me, one of the things I learned from United Way, right? Nonprofit and like for-profit are extremely similar. And so starting this nonprofit was very, very, very similar to an entrepreneurship journey. And so, you know, I did not have a big name prior to this. I was just some guy at United Way. Didn't have a big name prior to this. Nobody knew who Cornell was prior to this either. We were two guys who, if our board had created G.I.F.T by themselves and put out 2 job postings, they would not have hired us to do this. Exactly. They would not have hired us to do this. Because we didn't have the reputation, we didn't have the resumes to say that we could do this. And so and then I get into the position that I get into, and I get to we had an article in Startland, and then Jeff Simon is the president of Hush Blackwell, of the Kansas City market of Hush Blackwell. He reaches out and he wants to talk, and I'm like, whoa, like that's a huge law firm, and he's reaching and wanting to talk to me.
And that was based on the article in Startland.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, I meant to ask you how the Hush Blackwell connection came in. That's great.
Yeah. So they did that article for us, and Jeff Simon read it, and they were already thinking about building out what they call their Communities for Change program, to do some pro bono legal services for minority-owned businesses, and so he thought it would be a perfect fit for us to talk. But I'm coming from, he's a big time person in Kansas City, and I'm still nobody.
5 years ago you were at Lifetime Fitness,
exactly,
training people that their whole outfit matched, including their socks and their shoes and their everything.
Exactly. And so now I get to be in these rooms, and I email the city manager now, and I say, hey, can we talk? And he's like, yeah, sure, when? I could email the mayor right now and have so getting into these rooms, getting into these people who you think who you see have had really successful careers, who are leading successful organizations, and you think, oh man, they must have some magic thing behind them, or they must be super smart, or they must have this, or they must have that. And then you meet them and you're like, oh, that's like, they're a regular person, they're just like me, or just like my aunt, or just like so and so. And it starts to become a little bit more realistic and attainable, and just within reach, just by understanding that the magic that you think this person possesses, that you don't. Oh man, they launched Starbucks. they must have some kind of magical force field around them where everything they touch turns to gold and all of this. And it's like, no, they it was a process. They failed on a whole bunch of things, but then they succeeded and they persevered, and they had ideas that might have been similar to some of the ideas you would have had if you were trying to do the same thing. So one, being in rooms, getting to become, a person in Kansas City and seeing that and experiencing, those other leaders, while also talking to these smaller Black-owned businesses that are like, yeah, I want to do this, but, I don't have this, or I don't have that, or I don't have this, once I do this, then I'll launch that. That's where that quote came from. It's like I see all of these people that think that they need to wait on this, or think that they don't think they're missing something to launch this grand idea that they have, when really the thing that's probably killing them the most is that the fact that they won't just go ahead and launch it. They won't do it. They won't take that shot. Because if they take that shot, they might find that their ideas actually are as good as they think they are. They might find that the skill set that they think they have to launch it, like they do, or the skill set that they lack to launch it, they already have. And so for most people, I really do think that like that magic thing that you are waiting on to come and tell you, hey, I need to do this, or I can do this, or that you think you're missing to be successful in it, you probably already have it. And but you won't be successful in it because you won't pull the trigger. You won't go ahead and do it.
I think that's going to be your book title, something to that effect.
Yeah,
so I'm anxiously awaiting. Brandon, there's two groups of people I'd like to impart your advice to. One is I'm very empathetic to recent college graduates that are ready to go out into the world and make a living, make an impact. What advice do you have for them as they're searching for that first professional job?
For that first professional job, one, be open. There's no plan on the word in the world. I don't know, maybe, but there are not many plans. There are not many things that have gone as planned, right? According to my plans, I'm supposed to be doing a couple of different things. One, I'm supposed to be in Hollywood right now, right?
Hollywood, or the strength coach for the Chiefs, or
exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm supposed to be either in Hollywood right now, or I'm supposed to be the head strength and conditioning coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm neither one of those. I'm doing neither one of those things. And so be open. My degree is exercise physiology, but those same skills that I use in the fitness industry have really helped me in my career as a nonprofit executive. And so even if your career takes you to a place that you feel like has no resonance with your degree, there are likely still some learnings and talents and experiences that you have built up because of that college experience. And so just my fitness degree took me to become a nonprofit executive, and so don't think that your options and abilities are limited to the box of your degree. Be open, be flexible, take chances, and step out there and try to find something that you really want to do.
Yeah, no, great advice. The second group I'd like to help is, you're early in your career, but now you got promoted and now you're going to lead people. People report to you. What leadership advice do you have for them?
Yeah, man. So that, right? So let me preface that by saying we're about 2 months away from our 3-year anniversary. And I just mentioned, that we started with a 2-man volunteer team. And then we brought on, I became our first employee and Cornell became our second. And then we, within 12 months, we hired a third and we had 3 full-time staff. Now we are up to 7. We have 7 full-time staff. The skill set that it took to lead a 2-man volunteer organization is not the same skill set that it takes to lead a 7-person full-time organization. And so in doing that, I try to be really really cognizant and aware that different people have different personality types, right? And so if I say the same thing to 6 other staff here, if I say the same thing to each of them, I will likely get a different response, or I might get the same response verbally, and it might mean something completely different to each one of them. And so just trying to understand that there's a when you're moving and leading people, there's an individualized approach to it, instead of, when I was in college, I learned about this term psychic uniformity, and it was like, if you present a reasonable person presented with the same information will act in X way every single time. And so psychic uniformity doesn't exist, right? People, you can't give the same piece of information to 2 reasonable people and expect the same things out of them. So be prepared. Do not set yourself up for failure and going in and thinking, okay, I am going to lead in this way, and I am going to do this. And so by putting all of the focus on you and what you're going to do, you take out the human component of the team and the people that you're leading. There has to be some kind of input in there from the people that you're leading. And I think the best way to grow as a leader is to get feedback from the people that you lead. I do one-on-ones on a regular basis and give people, free reign. Like, what are you seeing? What do you think would make the organization better? Like, how am I doing? And taking that, because you have to continue to grow as a leader, and just because you get into a position of leadership doesn't mean that you know everything. And so, and it doesn't mean that you know everything more than all of the people that you're leading. That is absolutely not true. You can learn from them, and you should learn from them in order to continue to be an effective leader.
Brandon, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You're doing such great things for the Kansas City community. You just keep on going, brother. You're doing great things. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate you so much.
Okay. Take care.
You too.
What I love about Brandon is that he is in his early 30s and he's had like 40 jobs. I didn't think many people had more jobs than I did during the course of a career, and I'm a little bit older than Brandon. But no, what a story. Putting together, creating a not-for-profit, April of 2020, right when COVID started. It's a phenomenal story, and the what they're doing for Black-owned businesses in a red line zone of Kansas City is just phenomenal. And I love so much, and I said it in the podcast, but that quote he has, the magic that people are waiting for, they already have. It's so Oprah, Tony Robbins.
It does sound like
I love it. So, Joe, what was your takeaway from Brandon's conversation?
Let me tell you, if anybody has ever heard Brandon's story, the one thing that they will come away with is that there are no longer any excuses in life. Nobody can have any excuse. If you have something that you want to accomplish and you think that there's a barrier put up in front of you or something, you have no excuse. And the reason I know that is because a 14-year-old kid would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get on public transportation to get to school, to get to the weight room, and spend an hour lifting weights before his first class, a 14-year-old kid, in the off season, just so he could get on the varsity football team. And what that proves is that nobody anymore, from this date forward, nobody has any excuse for not accomplishing what you really want to do in your life. I think that's amazing.
And that's similar to your morning routine now. You hit the weight room in the gym about 4:30?
Yeah, I do. Jeff, I am a tub of lard. And that lard gets warmed up and stirred occasionally, but...
Joe, don't underestimate yourself. You have great leadership advice that we end every episode with. So what would you like to tell the audience today about leadership?
Today we are going to go to that great philosopher, Dwight K. Schrute, who once lamented, "Always the Padawan, never the Jedi.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.